The final days of their 6-month agreement approached, and with them came a mix of emotions: anticipation, nervousness, and an undeniable sense of longing. Both Alex and Amara knew that the terms of their arrangement were about to expire, but neither wanted to acknowledge it. Instead, they focused on making the most of the time they had left together, savoring moments that now felt precious rather than transactional. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows of the penthouse, Alex stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast, a task he would never have imagined himself doing just months earlier. Amara walked in, her hair slightly tousled from sleep, and smiled at the sight of him carefully flipping pancakes. "You're really embracing this domestic life," she teased, taking the seat at the counter. "Maybe I'm just trying to impress you before you walk out the door," Alex replied with a smirk, though there was a hint of seriousness beneath his playful tone. Amara's smile softened. "Who says I'm walking out?" Alex paused, spatula in hand, and turned to look at her. "Do you mean that?" "I don't know what happens next," she admitted, her voice steady, but tinged with vulnerability. "But I do know one thing: I'm not ready to say goodbye." Her words hung in the air, filling the room with a quiet intensity. Alex set down the spatula and moved closer, kneeling beside her chair. "Then don't," he said simply. "Stay. Not because of the bet, or the money, or anything else. Stay because I can't imagine my life without you anymore." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, but she didn't try to hide them. "Are you sure? This isn't just some grand gesture to make yourself feel better?" "No," Alex replied firmly, taking her hands in his. "This is me finally being honest, with you and with myself. I love you, Amara. Not Amelia, not the woman I met on the street, but you. All of you." For a moment, she didn't respond, letting his words sink in. Then, with a shaky laugh, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Relief washed over Alex's face, followed by a grin so wide it seemed to light up the entire room. He pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if afraid she might disappear. For the first time in months, they both felt a sense of peace, a certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A few weeks later, Alex planned a surprise for Amara, a second wedding ceremony, this time without any pretense or ulterior motives. It was small and intimate, held in a quiet garden surrounded by close friends who had come to genuinely care for both of them. Amara wore a simple white dress, her scars no longer hidden but embraced as part of her story. As she walked down the aisle, Alex's eyes glistened with unshed tears, overwhelmed by how far they had come. During the vows, Amara spoke from the heart, her voice clear and unwavering. "When we started this journey, I thought it was just about survival, for both of us. But along the way, we found something neither of us expected: a real connection, a partnership built on trust, respect, and love. And for that, I'll always be grateful." Alex echoed her sentiment, his voice thick with emotion. "You've taught me what it means to truly live, to see beyond appearances and value people for who they are. You've changed me in ways I didn't think possible, and I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me." As they exchanged rings and sealed their commitment with a kiss, the guests erupted into applause, their cheers mingling with the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. For Amara, it was a moment of rebirth, a chance to step fully into the person she had always been beneath the pain and fear. For Alex, it was redemption, a reminder that love has the power to transform even the hardest hearts. In the months and years that followed, their bond only grew stronger. Together, they faced challenges head-on, supporting each other through every triumph and setback. Their story became one of hope and resilience, proof that sometimes fate intervenes in the most unexpected ways, bringing two lost souls together to create something beautiful. As the days turned into weeks, Alex and Amara's relationship began to shift in ways neither of them had anticipated. The initial tension between them softened, replaced by a growing sense of understanding and trust. They spent more time together, sharing stories about their lives, both before and after they met. For Amara, it was the first time in years she had allowed herself to open up to someone. For Alex, it was an opportunity to confront his own flaws and insecurities, something he had always avoided. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the glittering cityscape, Amara asked a question that had been on her mind for a while. "Why did you really make that bet, Alex? Was it just pride, or was there something else?" Alex hesitated, staring at the horizon as if searching for the right words. "At first, I thought it was about proving a point, to myself and everyone else. But now, I think maybe I was trying to fill a void. My life has always been about success, money, power, but none of it ever felt like enough. Meeting you made me realize how empty I've been." His honesty surprised her. She had expected another flippant remark or a deflection, but instead, he laid bare his vulnerabilities. It was unsettling, and yet comforting, all at once. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly, "bringing me into this world of yours?" "No," he replied without hesitation. "Not anymore. You've shown me things I didn't know I needed to see, like strength, resilience, humanity." He smiled faintly. "You're not what I expected, Amara. You're so much more." Her cheeks flushed slightly, but she didn't look away. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, letting the cool night breeze brush against her skin. "And you're not who I thought you were either," she admitted. "When we started this, I thought you were just some arrogant rich guy playing games. But you're complicated, and maybe even a little lost. Lost is a good word for it," Alex said with a wry chuckle. "But I think I'm finding my way now." Their conversations grew deeper over time, touching on topics they had both avoided for years. Amara spoke about the guilt she carried for surviving the fire when her family hadn't, and how it shaped every decision she made afterward. Alex confessed his fear of failure, despite his outward confidence, and how his need for validation drove him to take reckless risks. In each other, they found a safe space to unpack their baggage, free from judgment or pretense. The change wasn't just emotional, it was practical too. Alex encouraged Amara to pursue interests she had long abandoned, enrolling her in art classes and introducing her to people who inspired her creativity. In return, Amara challenged Alex to reconnect with parts of himself he had neglected, his love for music, his passion for helping others through charity work. Together, they discovered new sides of themselves, ones they might never have explored alone. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in how they saw each other. To Alex, Amara was no longer the beggar he had married for a bet. She was a woman of depth and resilience, someone who reminded him of the importance of kindness and authenticity. To Amara, Alex was no longer the arrogant millionaire who had swept her into this absurd arrangement. He was a man capable of growth, humility, and genuine affection. By the time the 5th month rolled around, their bond had deepened into something neither could deny, a quiet, steady affection that went beyond the terms of their agreement. One rainy afternoon, as they sat side by side reading books in the living room, Alex broke the silence. "What happens after these 6 months are up?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Amara closed her book and looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I don't know," she admitted. "Do you want me to leave?" He shook his head slowly. "No, I don't." For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the unspoken truth hanging between them. What had started as a wager had evolved into something real, something neither wanted to let go of. As the rain continued to patter against the windows, they moved closer, their hands brushing tentatively. For the first time, they allowed themselves to hope, not for a fleeting escape, but for a future built on trust, love, and mutual respect. The discovery of their shared past lingered like a storm cloud over the penthouse, casting shadows on what was already an uneasy arrangement. Amara sat silently on the edge of her bed, staring at the wooden box in her lap. Her hands trembled as she traced the edges of the photographs inside, memories flooding back in waves she wasn't sure she could handle. She had spent years running from her old life, burying it so deep that even she sometimes forgot who she used to be. But now, with Alex's revelation, everything felt raw again. Her pain, her grief, her shame. In the next room, Alex paced back and forth, his mind racing. He couldn't stop thinking about the little girl in the photograph, the bright, cheerful Amelia Grayson he vaguely remembered from school. Back then, she had been a picture of innocence, always smiling, always kind. It was hard to reconcile that image with the woman sitting just a few feet away, hardened by years of struggle and loss. Yet, beneath the scars and the guarded exterior, he could still see glimpses of her. The realization unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Unable to stay away, Alex returned to Amara's room. He knocked softly before stepping inside, finding her exactly where he'd left her. "Can we talk?" he asked gently, his usual bravado replaced by something softer, almost vulnerable. Amara glanced up but didn't resist. "What else is there to say? You know my secret now. I'm not who I pretended to be." "It's not pretending," Alex replied, pulling up a chair to sit across from her. "You survived something unimaginable. That takes strength. Not many people could do what you've done." She let out a bitter laugh. "Strength? Is that what you call it? I ran away, Alex. I gave up everything because I couldn't face the world anymore. And look where it got me, living on the streets, reduced to nothing." "But you're still here," he countered firmly. "And you agreed to this crazy marriage, knowing full well how much judgment you'd face. That's not weakness, that's courage." For the first time since they met, Amara looked at him differently. There was sincerity in his voice, a depth she hadn't expected. Slowly, she began to speak, sharing pieces of her story she had kept buried for years. She told him about the fire that destroyed her family home, the burns that disfigured her face, and the isolation that followed. She spoke of nights spent hiding in alleyways, scavenging for food, and learning to survive in a world that no longer seemed to have a place for her. As she talked, Alex listened intently, his heart aching for the girl she once was, and the woman she had become. He realized how wrong he had been to reduce her to a pawn in his wager. This wasn't just some game. It was a second chance. For both of them. When she finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Alex broke it. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I never should have treated you the way I did. I thought this was about proving a point, but now I see it's about so much more. You deserve better than what I've given you." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. "Why are you saying all this? You don't owe me anything. Once these 6 months are over, we'll go our separate ways, and you can forget about me." "No," Alex said firmly. "I don't want to forget about you. I don't think I can." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For the first time, neither of them tried to deny the connection growing between them, a bond forged through honesty, vulnerability, and mutual respect. They weren't the same people they had been when they first met, and as dawn broke over the city skyline, they both knew their lives would never be the same again. The reception ended late into the night, with guests slowly trickling out until only a handful remained. Amara had spent most of the evening keeping to herself, observing the glitz and glamour from a distance. She wasn't used to such extravagance, nor did she feel comfortable being the center of attention, even if it was for all the wrong reasons. As the last of the stragglers left, Alex suggested they retire to his penthouse, where they would spend their first night as husband and wife. Amara agreed silently, following him to the elevator. The ride-up was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of machinery and the occasional clink of Alex's cufflinks against his wrist. When they reached the top floor, the doors slid open to reveal a sprawling apartment that seemed more like a museum than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city skyline, while sleek furniture and modern art pieces decorated every corner. It was beautiful, but cold, almost impersonal. "This is your room," Alex said, gesturing toward one of the guest bedrooms. "I figured you'd want your own space." "Thanks," Amara replied curtly, stepping inside. The room was immaculate, with plush bedding, and an en-suite bathroom stocked with everything she could possibly need. Yet, despite its luxury, it felt foreign, like she didn't belong there. She set her small bag on the bed and began unpacking her belongings. A few changes of clothes, a hairbrush, and a wooden box she always carried with her. As she placed the box on the dresser, it slipped from her hands and fell to the floor with a thud. The lid popped open, spilling its contents across the carpet. Old photographs scattered everywhere, some faded with time, others still vivid. Amara knelt down to gather them, her fingers trembling slightly as memories flooded back. One photo in particular caught her eye. A young girl with bright eyes and a wide smile, standing beside a man and woman who looked unmistakably like her parents. Unbeknownst to her, Alex had been passing by when he heard the noise. Concerned, he peeked into the room and froze at the sight of the photos splayed across the floor. His eyes widened as he recognized the little girl in one of the pictures. It was someone he hadn't seen in years, someone whose face haunted his past. "What? Where did you get these?" he asked hoarsely, stepping closer. Amara looked up, startled. "They're mine," she said defensively, quickly gathering the photos and shoving them back into the box. "Why does it matter?" Alex hesitated, his mind racing. He pointed to the picture of the little girl. "That's you, isn't it?" Before everything changed. Her expression hardened. "How do you know about me?" Instead of answering, Alex turned and walked briskly to his study, leaving Amara confused and wary. Moments later, he returned holding a dusty photo album. Flipping through the pages, he stopped at a familiar image. The same little girl, but this time surrounded by classmates at what appeared to be a private school event. Beneath the photo was a caption, * class of 2005 *. "I knew you," Alex admitted quietly, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You were Amelia Grayson, the daughter of one of my father's business partners. We went to the same school for a year before." His voice trailed off, the weight of realization sinking in. Amara stared at him, her heart pounding. "Before the fire," she finished for him. "The fire that took my family and left me scared. I ran away after that because I couldn't handle the pity, or the questions. I thought starting over meant leaving everything behind, including my old life." Alex sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. This wasn't just some random beggar he had picked off the street. She was someone he once knew, someone whose life had been torn apart by tragedy. And now, fate had brought them together again under the strangest circumstances imaginable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them crackled with unspoken emotions, shock, guilt, curiosity, and perhaps even hope. Whatever barriers they had built around themselves began to crumble, revealing cracks that neither could ignore. As the clock ticked past midnight, the truth of their shared history hung heavy in the room, forcing both of them to confront the possibility that this marriage might be far more than either of them had bargained for. The day of the wedding arrived faster than either Alex or Amara had anticipated. Despite their efforts to keep things low-key, Alex's reputation and wealth made it impossible to avoid attention. News of the unlikely union spread like wildfire through New York's elite circles, sparking endless gossip and speculation. By the time the ceremony began, the small chapel Alex had chosen was packed with curious onlookers. Friends, acquaintances, business partners, and even a few paparazzi who had somehow caught wind of the event. Amara stood at the entrance of the chapel, dressed in a simple yet elegant gown that Alex had insisted on buying for her. The fabric flowed gracefully around her, softening the harsh lines of her scars. Though she looked beautiful in her own quiet way, she felt exposed under the weight of so many judgmental stares. As she took her first step down the aisle, whispers erupted around her. Some guests sneered openly. Others tried, and failed to hide their smirks behind fake smiles. Amara ignored them all, focusing instead on the man waiting for her at the altar. Alex, meanwhile, stood tall and composed, his usual confidence masking the unease brewing inside him. He had orchestrated this entire spectacle to prove a point, but now, as he watched Amara walk toward him, he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this moment was profoundly wrong. Her presence commanded respect, even amidst the mockery swirling around them. For the first time, he questioned whether he had underestimated her and himself. When Amara finally reached the altar, the officiant began the ceremony. The words were standard, recited countless times before, but they carried an unusual weight in this particular setting. When it came time for Alex to repeat his vows, his voice rang clear and steady, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Amara, on the other hand, spoke her lines softly but firmly, each word laced with quiet determination. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like a performance, but deep down, both of them knew there was more truth in those vows than either cared to admit. After the rings were exchanged and the officiant declared them husband and wife, polite applause filled the room. It was strained and awkward, lacking any real warmth. Alex offered Amara his arm, and together they walked back down the aisle, side by side. Outside the chapel, cameras flashed relentlessly as they posed briefly for photos. Amara kept her expression neutral, refusing to give the critics anything to feed on. Alex, however, wore his signature smirk, playing the part of the cocky millionaire perfectly. Later that evening, the newlyweds attended a reception held at one of Alex's luxurious properties. The venue was decorated extravagantly, with crystal chandeliers casting shimmering light across the room. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne, and a live band played soft music in the background. Guests mingled, laughing and chatting, but the underlying tension was palpable. Every glance, every whispered comment seemed to underscore the absurdity of the union. Amara retreated to a quiet corner, sipping water while observing the scene unfold. She didn't care about the luxury or the glitz. What struck her most was how little these people truly saw her. To them, she was just a prop in Alex's grand show, a symbol of his arrogance and audacity. Yet, as she scanned the crowd, her gaze landed on Alex, who was engrossed in conversation with a group of friends. There was something oddly vulnerable about him tonight, as if the weight of his actions was beginning to sink in. As the night wore on, Alex excused himself from the party and found Amara standing alone near the balcony doors. "You holding up okay?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. She nodded. "It's not my first time being judge." Her honesty caught him off guard. "Still, I'm sorry if this feels overwhelming." "It is what it is," she replied simply. Then, after a pause, she added, "But don't think for a second that I'm here just because of your money. You'll see soon enough. I'm not afraid to stand up for myself." Her words lingered in the air, leaving Alex unsettled. For the first time, he realized that this marriage might challenge him in ways he hadn't foreseen. And as they stood there together, surrounded by opulence and judgment, neither could predict how drastically their lives were about to change. The next morning, Alex arranged for Amara to meet him at a small, discreet cafe near Central Park. He had spent the night tossing and turning, replaying their conversation in his head. Something about her, her quiet defiance, the pain hidden behind her eyes, had unsettled him. For someone who prided himself on being unshakable, this was unusual. Still, he reminded himself that this was just a transaction, nothing more, a means to an end. He couldn't afford to let emotions get in the way. When Amara arrived, she looked slightly different from the night before. She had cleaned herself up as best she could, though her clothes were still worn and mismatched. Her scars remained visible, but there was a newfound resolve in the way she carried herself. She walked into the cafe with measured steps, scanning the room until her gaze landed on Alex. Without hesitation, she approached his table and sat down across from him. "Good morning," Alex greeted her, forcing a polite smile. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I said I'd do it, Amara replied simply, her tone neutral. I keep my word. Alex nodded, impressed despite himself. Right. Well, first things first. We need to make this official. He slid a document across the table toward her. It was a legally binding contract outlining the terms of their agreement, 6 months of marriage, half the promised money up front, and the remainder after the period ended. There were also clauses ensuring her financial independence once the arrangement concluded. Amara picked up the papers and skimmed through them carefully, her brow furrowed as she read. And Alex found himself growing nervous. What if she changed her mind? What if she walked away right now? To his relief, she eventually set the papers down and looked at him directly. This is real, she asked, her voice steady. You're not going to disappear after 6 months and leave me worse off than before. It's real, Alex assured her. I may be a lot of things, but I don't break promises. You'll have everything you need. And then some. Amara hesitated for a moment longer before nodding. Okay, let's do it. Over coffee, they discussed logistics. Alex explained that they would need to plan a quick wedding to satisfy the terms of the bet. He offered to buy her new clothes, hire stylists, anything she needed to feel comfortable. But to his surprise, Amara shook her head. I don't need all that, she said firmly. This isn't about making me look presentable for your friends. It's about getting what we both want. If you try to turn this into some spectacle, I'm out. Her words struck a chord with Alex. For the first time, he realized that this wasn't just about winning a wager. It was about two people coming together under extraordinary circumstances. He agreed to keep things simple, though deep down, he knew that simplicity wouldn't shield them from the inevitable scrutiny they'd face. As the days passed, preparations for the wedding moved forward. Alex handled most of the details, while Amara kept her distance, appearing only when necessary. Despite her outward calm, Alex noticed moments when her guard slipped. When she seemed lost in thought, or stared off into the distance, as if remembering something painful. Each time, he felt a pang of curiosity, but resisted the urge to ask questions. After all, this was business. Personal connections weren't part of the deal. But late one evening, as they reviewed final plans in Alex's penthouse, Amara surprised him by speaking up. Why are you really doing this? She asked abruptly, breaking the silence between them. Alex blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? You're not stupid, she continued. You know people will talk. They'll laugh at you for marrying someone like me. So why go through with it? Is it just the bet? For a moment, Alex didn't answer. The truth was, he wasn't entirely sure himself. Was it pride? Boredom? Or maybe something deeper that he hadn't yet uncovered? Whatever it was, he couldn't put it into words. Instead, he shrugged and gave her a half-smile. Let's just say I've always liked a challenge. Amara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just remember, one day you might find yourself facing challenges you didn't expect. Her words lingered in the air long after she left, leaving Alex uneasy. For the first time since making the bet, he wondered if he had bitten off more than he could chew. After leaving the glittering penthouse, Alex stepped into the cold night air with determination etched on his face. The streets of New York were alive with activity. Taxi horns blared, street vendors shouted their final offers of the day, and people hurried past, bundled up against the chill. But Alex wasn't paying attention to any of that. His focus was locked on the woman he had spotted from the balcony. She hadn't moved from her spot on the curb, her head bowed as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. As he approached, Alex slowed his pace, suddenly unsure of how to begin this bizarre conversation. What was he supposed to say? Hi, I'm a millionaire, and I want to marry you for 6 months. It sounded ridiculous even in his own mind. Still, he couldn't back out now. He cleared his throat loudly enough to catch her attention. The woman looked up, startled by his presence. Her eyes widened slightly when she realized who he was. a well-dressed man clearly out of place in this gritty corner of the city. "Can I help you?" she asked wearily, her voice soft but firm. There was no trace of fear in her tone, only caution. Up close, Alex could see that her scars weren't just surface level. They told a story of pain and survival. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was an undeniable strength in the way she held herself, something that made him pause for a moment longer than expected. Uh. Alex stumbled over his words, uncharacteristically flustered. He took a deep breath and decided to dive straight in. "My name is Alex Hawthorne. I know this might sound crazy, but I need your help with something." She raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over her face. "Help with what?" Alex hesitated, searching for the right words. "Look, I'll be honest. I made a bet with some friends. I said I could marry someone like you. Someone outside my usual circle. For 6 months. If you agree, I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. You'll never have to worry about money again." Her expression hardened. "You think I'm desperate enough to sell myself for your little game?" She shot back, her voice sharp but controlled. "I don't care how rich you are. I'm not a pawn in your stupid bet." Alex felt a flicker of guilt but quickly pushed it aside. This was business, nothing more. "It's not like that," he insisted, though even he didn't fully believe his own words. "You'd be doing me a favor. And trust me, the amount of money I'm offering will change your life." For a long moment, she stared at him, weighing his words. Then, to his surprise, she let out a bitter laugh. "You don't even know me. You don't know anything about me. Why should I trust you?" "You don't have to trust me," Alex replied. "We'll sign a contract. Legally binding. You'll get half the money up front, and the rest after 6 months. No tricks, no strings attached." The woman, Amara, as she later introduced herself, was silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she sighed and stood up, brushing dirt off her tattered coat. "Fine," she said quietly, "but not because I trust you, because I'm tired of living like this. If this is my chance to start over, then I'll take it." Relief washed over Alex, though it was tinged with unease. He hadn't expected her to agree so easily, or for her quiet dignity to leave such an impression on him. As they shook hands to seal their strange deal, neither of them realized how much this decision would change both their lives. For Alex, it was supposed to be a simple wager. For Amara, it was a lifeline. Neither knew that beneath the surface, secrets and truths lay waiting to unravel everything they thought they understood about each other and themselves. In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and luxury cars lined the streets, Alexander Alex Hawthorne II was a name everyone knew. He was handsome, wealthy, and had an ego that matched his bank account. People admired him for his success, but whispered about his arrogance behind closed doors. Alex thrived in this world of glitz and glamour, attending parties almost every night, surrounded by people eager to be near someone so powerful. One evening, at yet another extravagant event hosted in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, Alex found himself deep in conversation with a group of friends. They were sipping expensive champagne, discussing topics ranging from business deals to relationships. The topic eventually shifted to love, what it meant, whether it was real, and if beauty played a role in attraction. Some argued that true love transcended appearances, while others insisted that looks mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. Feeling invincible after a few glasses of bubbly, Alex smirked and declared, "Love. It's all just a game. Money can buy anything, even devotion." His statement drew laughter from some and raised eyebrows from others. One of his acquaintances, a man named Richard, leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "Prove it," he challenged. "If you're so sure money can buy love, then marry someone who has nothing. Someone no one would ever look twice at. And stay married for 6 months. If you can do that, I'll believe your theory." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Alex. For a moment, he hesitated. Was Richard serious? Marry someone completely outside his league, not just financially but physically too. It sounded absurd, even for someone as bold as Alex. But then, his competitive nature kicked in. He couldn't back down now, not when everyone was watching. With a confident chuckle, he replied, "You're on. I'll find someone tonight, and we'll see how wrong you are." His friends laughed nervously, unsure if he was joking or truly planning to go through with it. Alex, however, wasn't kidding. As the party continued, his mind raced with possibilities. Who could he choose? Someone poor, unattractive, and desperate enough to agree to such a ridiculous arrangement. Little did he know, this decision would change his life forever. Later that night, as Alex stepped out onto the balcony to clear his head, he glanced down at the street below. Among the sea of people hurrying home or heading to late-night destinations, one figure caught his eye. A woman sitting alone on the curb. Her clothes were worn, her face partially hidden under layers of dirt and scars. She looked up briefly, meeting his gaze, before lowering her head again. Something about her intrigued him. Maybe it was the way she carried herself despite her circumstances, or maybe it was the challenge she represented. Without giving it much thought, Alex grabbed his coat and headed downstairs. This was it, the person who would help him win the bet. What he didn't realize was that this encounter wouldn't just be about proving a point. It would force him to confront parts of himself he'd long ignored.